Good evening. It is February 27th, 2025 at 7:02 p.m. And this is the Town of Wellington, Connecticut's Board of Finance budget meeting, and it's called to order. We'll start with seating of alternates, and alternate is needed for Christina. We have a motion for Britt to fill that seat.
I move to seat Britt in place of Christina.
Second.
Okay, if you have a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Abstentions? It's unanimous. Next, we'll go on to approval of the minutes for February 20th, 2025.
I'd like to make just a word insert on page 3, first full paragraph, where I'm asking Mr. Vanderbilt if he saw any trends or any, and it doesn't say what, in issues maybe, or issues of concern in the coming 5 years.
Do you else have any corrections? A motion to accept the minutes with the edits that Stephanie's mentioned.
I'll move to accept as amended.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions? It's unanimous. Next, we'll go on to present to speak. Public participation is desired and encouraged. Speakers will be limited to time and appropriateness of comments. To maintain progress, stay on topic and maintain the quorum. Do we have anybody for present to speak? So we'll move on to new business. Today's presentations, the Board of Education, Superintendent Phil Stevens. Hello, Phil.
Here we are again. Brianna Ross is the chair of Board of Ed, so she's sitting here with me as well tonight.
Hi, just.
Go ahead. I'm not sure, Donna, are you here for us as well?
Donna's here for everybody all the time.
Appreciate that. So you want to start?
Sure, yeah. Brianna Ross, I'm the Board of Education chairperson, in case we haven't had a chance to meet in person as of yet. I wanted to thank the Board of Finance for having us here today. Looking forward to moving forward with this budget process this year and having the best outcome for everyone. You have received a full copy of the Board of Education's 2025-2026 budget. The three most important things that the board would like you to know are that 1, all members of our board workshopped and voted for this budget unanimously. Number 2, it has been created with our board's goals in mind, which always are for our students. And third, most importantly, this budget meets the needs of all Wellington students in our pre-K through 8th grade programs. Superintendent Stevens tonight will provide you with the program highlights, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
So instead of going through every single page of the document, we created a snapshot for you with program highlights on it. There's nothing, when I say there's nothing new, you all have been in this process with us. The document looks the same. No new positions, things like that. So it's relatively consistent. But we thought we'd pull the highlights out of each program. That would kind of make things a little bit cleaner for you to go, hey, what's the increase, what's the decrease? And so that's what we've done. I can share my screen if you want, if I need to show something, because I'm not going to reference the big document, if that makes sense. I'm just going to go off this for now. Good with that? Yeah, okay. So we have 10 programs that make up the Board of Education budget. And obviously each of these programs is tied to something that's in the board goals. And Center School is the first program. And within that Center School program, there's a few new things. So there's an increase of $9,900 for emergency repairs. You saw this in the budget last year as well. And that's for emergency maintenance. This year so far, that money is not in the current budget, and we have spent $11,600 at Center School this year on emergency repairs, plumbing, and those are the two that are constant. We're trying to keep that without having to go to town meeting to tie it to the $1 million. that's there, that's in the fund. But that is something that's in the budget this year is an increase. We have, and this is, you're gonna hear this one constantly, we have newly negotiated, excuse me, newly negotiated contracts. And they're 3-year contracts from 25 to 28. So those obviously result in salary increases. It is the teacher's contract and it is the non-certified contract. The non-certified contract is a large group. It's nurses, paraprofessionals, office staff, staff support specialists. It's a lot of groups. It's long. And so one is settled. The other one is in process. And so obviously we had to build a number in to make sure it's covered within the budget anyways. Okay. And then we had a decrease in purchases and supplies. When we budget, every time we have spreadsheets that Donna and I share, and I share out with the administrators, and I question every line. If there's no comment in it, the things that I get, I will ask administrators and staff, what's the story of that? And so when we are using academic programs and their subscriptions, those are purchase services. If we're not using it anymore, I take it out. That money comes out of the budget, it's no longer there. So the decrease in purchase services is because of that. The decrease in supplies is because we purchased a new program and we have been able now to decrease in supply money because we've now purchased those programs. So we had some one-shot deals for certain things and to supplement in science and social studies. And those numbers have now come down. So there's a decrease there. All right, so those are really the highlights in program 1 for the increases and decreases. I'm not sure if you want me to plow through this and then you want to ask questions all over the place, or that works for you. Keep going. Read the cues. Program 2 is Hall School. Again, there's an increase for the emergency repairs there. Hall School has $9,600 this year in repairs. The majority of theirs are the same exact thing. And there's no budget line that covers that one. We're trying to eat it this year, not have to go to town, but again, it's $9,600 in heating and plumbing, whether it's a drain or something like that. So it's well needed and would be used. Again, they have the contracts. This is a bigger jump, and I wanted to explain this one a bit. If you look at the main budget document and you look at program 2 and you look at the salaries, you're going to see a larger jump there. And what happens is when someone leaves, say they announce they're leaving in May, and then we hire somebody new. We've already done the budget for that next year. And so the person that left may have cost $60,000 a year and taken benefits. The new person coming in may be 50, they may be 90. They may or may not take benefits. So the increase that you see on the salary side on program 2 is not just because of the contract change. It is because we had some people go out, some of the people we hired were a little more expensive, and that's just where it leveled out. That is typical. You're going to see at the end where when we get to program 10, we have huge savings on benefits side for some of the reasons. Okay, and then there's an increase in purchase services on contracts. I was talking to someone about this. It feels like every single contract we have has gone up 4 or 5%. Every single one. I feel like typically it's medical, and dental that's going up. Those are the ones that didn't go up this year. Everything else has increased costs. So to keep the same level of service and programming that we're looking for, they all had an added cost, and that's what's in the purchase service lines. Program 3 is special education. This is again one of our challenging programs. We continue to have 6 outplacements that we're budgeting for next year. I hope we don't have a repeat of what happened last year where we did a presentation and had to come back to you. But as of today, and I always say that, as of today, we are budgeting for 6 outplacements. There was increases in transportation and tuition, and that's something that we just have to pay It was an increase of $224,000. What I will tell you is I was notified, I think it was December, by one of our outside providers that we have outplacements at, that they were in financial crisis and we had a 15% increase mid-year. That's now. So we currently have over a $200,000 deficit as of today for 24-25 for special education. We have covered some of that through transfers from our non-lapsing fund on top of what was already applied. We have covered that from, thankfully, we had a prepayment on transportation from end of the year funds at last year. And then we've also done an additional non-lapsing fund payment. If you've watched the news, you know that they're talking to the state government about the shortage in funds currently in special education. We count on an excess cost grant. We were expecting 407,000, and we were told we were getting just over 300,000. That was pretty painful. It has since changed as long as the governor doesn't veto it. They added another $40 million, which would typically we are funded around 70%. We were going to be funded at 64%. It looks like if everything goes through, we may be funded at 78% this year, which will then help us with our shortfall currently. And I'm explaining this because this is the program again that's so volatile. You know, I came back to you last year, and again, here we sit today that with a $231,000 shortfall after all said and done. So we believe we're going to cover that this year, but we continue to watch that budget day to day. So the increases in special education just continue. It is absolutely a statewide conversation. It's not just a Wilmington problem. And then the last thing, obviously, that's on that program is the newly negotiated contract. Again, they have a balance of some people that had left and gone to other districts or retired. And then we have some new folks coming in that were a little more expensive. So you'll see the balance of both the contract change for a new contract as well as the salary for the new person.
Can we ask questions as we go on this?
You can do that however you'd like.
Is okay, is okay, Bruce? Okay. So a couple things, Phil, I just was wondering, is it right for me to assume that under purchase services with the tuition for the outplacement increase and the transportation, those figures that we really are, is that transportation all focused on the transfer outs? Okay, so
For the most part, there's some specialized transportation in district as well.
that's what I figured, but is that a minor amount? Okay, so that's like 1.2 million for 6 kids, so roughly 200 grand each. Last year, we were kind of talking about it roughly being around 150, 160. Is that accurate for me to take that away? Okay.
And that number, remember, is before excess costs. So something that we did new that's in the budget document, and I really encourage you to look at this, is in the appendix, there's a special education section, and we added it how excess cost is calculated. So, and the reason I bring that up is it's based upon your per pupil expenditure. Small districts are getting crushed because of the way it's calculated. It really hurts you. So our per pupil is around $24,000. We have to spend 4.5 times that number before we even get eligible for excess cost for a student. So we're talking about, before we even go anywhere, we're talking about spending, you know, upwards of $110,000, $120,000, and then we're eligible. Allington is 18, so they're spending 80, and then they're getting 70% back. So the example, and I encourage you to look at that example, because this is what particularly my superintendent group is really battling for a new way to look at this, because small districts and typically in the Northeast are really getting hurt by this. There's no way someone should be able to pay 80 and then get a bunch of money back where we're spending well over.
Well, how many counties provide transportation?
Well, I'll be honest with you, not many. You want to start a new business?
Do we go to each one, like looking at price?
We do, we've shopped. So typically we're talking about East Con does transportation. We're talking about M&J. And then there's, other smaller ones. We're currently searching for a bus right now. And there's not drivers and there's not buses. And the cost per day is exorbitant. We've kind of, I think, joked at the board, but it's also part of a serious conversation to say, do we need to consider putting in CIP in the future, some sort of wheelchair accessible van or something? Because what we're paying right now is astronomical.
Is it so, I think it's not elsewhere, but the transportation for the district is $500,000, right?
It's something like that, yes.
So
Correct. That's,
compared to almost 400,000,
and
that's for all this other.
that shared, the special education
I realize
transportation,
it's a different ballgame.
it's okay. It's shared. We're sharing that cost with the other districts. So if we know someone is sending a student from Tolland to another location, we call Tolland and say, hey, the cost is $400 a day, you want to share it? And then we get a better
Is
rate.
this mostly for 6 kids or is this a lot?
I'll give you an example. And this transportation's been really frustrating. We are obligated by law when we have a homeless student who is living in another district to transport them in. Because transportation is so scarce, we literally are sometimes having to transport kids in a taxi or a small van and putting someone in with that student. It is, and the charge is shared with the district they're living in, but it's still unbelievable money. It's just unbelievable money. I mean, IRS rate is what, 70 cents a mile? We're paying quadruple. It's per day. It could be $400 a day for a student. Transportation.
Yeah.
We're actually looking at, I mean, when I say like, we look at the government contracts, the sales, I look at those. We're trying to determine right now some of in the purchasing conversation. The senior center has a van, could that be used? If there's certain size passenger things that you can use, that you don't need a special license. We're looking at all those things because again, if we could provide specialized transportation ourselves, it would obviously be cheaper to pay, even with family benefits, paying someone, it would be cheaper. So it is expensive, yes. And I'll tell you that this program 3 has $100,000 non-lapsing funds applied to next year's. So last year was 62, we applied 100 this year.
I see that.
And every grant dollar that we have for special ed is applied. As an offset.
Just back, keeping on camera and said one thing. That's a little example, but, so out of district, what's the criteria that they have to come?
So
What's the determining?
we just talked about this at the Board of Education meeting. There's some gray in there, Jeff, and it's really frustrating because what is considered to be permanent housing and what's not permanent housing. So if someone is considered to be homeless and they're identified, so they currently attend Wellington, we find out that they're homeless and they're living with some friends or relatives in a different town, we have to transport them in. And what we have to determine is if it becomes permanent. And it's very hard to prove that. And if it happens in October, they are here the remainder of the year and we're paying transportation. So we're trying to work with people again for shared rides, things like that. You feel bad because obviously they're homeless. But we're seeing more and more of that. And I did just share this with the board. That homeless transportation is not in the budget. We've been kind of covering it with, if we can, with transportation costs and sharing and through the grant funds that we get. But it's getting a little bit too large. That's something that we might have to add in the future because when you start talking about, 5,000 plus a year, that just doesn't exist.
So the vehicle needs to be like a handicap accessible van or something like.
Probably best case scenario with a lift, yes.
It works the same way as well.
150 grand, something like that.
That's-
Clean model used, driver 60 grand a year, maybe.
It's expensive.
That'd be cheaper than this.
That's what, and the challenge too is like sometimes the one outplacement is this way, and one is this way. so you're still pay. But again, just trying to find the balance. That's why we're looking at those things, because it costs money.
And the way it works for our unhoused population is the same for our students who are in foster care outside of our district. It's the same arrangement for as long as they're outplaced in a different setting.
The other piece that the board talked about in it, the special education, it falls, this preschool teacher falls into this program. We have to provide special education for students that are in preschool, provide services to them. And we have a joint program. One of the things that we're looking at, just to try and bring in some funds, is if we had some sort of pay to attend. The pay to attend would be minimal, and you still have to kind of follow based upon their how much money they make, a free, a reduced, full. And our rough calculations are, we probably could bring in maybe $30,000, and that wouldn't cover the cost of transportation for preschool. So it's something that we're looking at all of those things. But again, you start charging people for preschool, does that raise people out of it? So we're looking at a lot of different things. This is one program in particular that we're trying to be creative, and we always are. We have an outstanding director. I will tell you that I can't tell you the number of phone calls she makes just to try and share services. You're still trying to provide what's best we get, but the most appropriate that's.
So with the 6 kids, how many different locations are they going to?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I believe there's 3. I think there's 3 locations. But I know there's at least 3.
All right, so are they all going out at the same time, or if you had your own
Depends on the
vehicle?
school, depends on middle school, elementary. Some of them have their own hours. That's why we look to share, ride share. Okay, we just touched on transportation, which is program 4. This program is we're in a 5-year contract with so it's obviously contractual. We battled this year. We have a $24,000 increase coming up. What I will tell you is we battled. The president was able to show me the rates for surrounding towns, and we were way below. They're starting to try and get us closer, which is part of this increase. It was, if we'd gone out to bid, we would have gotten absolutely crushed. So a $24,000 increase is a big jump in 1 year in contract. But if we went out to bid, it would be worse. The other piece that's in here, the good news is diesel fuels decreased. It's about roughly $6,000. Donna trolls we start talking about fuel pretty quick early on, and we get daily rate updates, and we had paid $298 last year, and pretty early on we locked in at $278. So we see some savings across multiple things. Heating is one, diesel is one. So you can take a gamble and hold out longer, but it's we saw the savings, we jumped on it, so we did that. Program 5 is the health services, and that's, again, there's the nurses that are in there, that they're part of that newly negotiated contract. So obviously there's salary increases in there. And every single year, we track kind of our averages. And so we watch when we're where our subs are, how much we're spending each year. And so this past year, we had a lot less usage. And so we were able to reduce the amount of money we have in for subs. We do that for a lot of things, whether it's club transportation, whether it's, subs for staff, whether it's subs for nurses, whatever it is. And so that's where we reduce something. That's why we look at the data. Program 6 is curriculum and staff development. Again, there's part of that program has stipends in it. That's things like team leaders, coaches, things like that. Those are all part of the stipends that are part of the teacher's contract. There's an increase in that, and so it's built into that's part of this contract. And then we were able to reduce the funds for professional development. Some of those, I think all the COVID funds are now gone. The good thing that we had with the COVID funds is we were able to do a lot of professional development, a lot of really good professional development. And we're trying to keep our teachers, because we've invested in them. Invest in people and you don't have to train new people, it saves you money. So we were able to reduce this. That is important because you don't have to start from scratch. Some of our staff members that have been here for 4 or 5 years now have been through thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in professional development with a new English language arts program, pre-K through 8th grade, new math program through pre-K through 6th grade. So there's a lot of things that we've done, and we continue to train anybody new, but at least there's a big decrease there. And again, we look at that usage.
You know, last year you captured that savings of, you know, whatever, $7,000 on in-house workshops, teacher workshops being, and that seems like you're sustaining that. Is that, I'm assuming that's going really well.
It is. And it only works well when you have people in-house who have the expertise and are willing to do those things. And so 2 days ago, maybe it was yesterday, I don't remember, I walked into a meeting where our math coach was working with the entire 1st grade. It's happening internally. We're not paying an outside expert, and the work is happening. So there's professional development happening. So we continue to do that. Some of that money pays for subs. Sometimes it's materials, but it's significantly cheap. Second job, you want to drive a bus and you want to charge for professional development. These people are charging $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a day on the low end. And some of these folks are $10,000 and $12,000 a day. You don't use those folks.
How do you get out of the tax?
Let me tell you, I would love to know that answer. It's, I don't know.
You get to visit there too.
There's just enough, I guess, you know, you get one person that's willing to pay and then people follow. That is, to me, it's a waste of money for what you're gonna get for one day. If I'm gonna pay $10,000 for something, I want ongoing, all year long, numerous sessions, follow through, coaching, like the whole thing. That's where it becomes worth it. But for one person to come in for 7 hours, which is why we don't do it. The utilities this year, this is one area that had a $22,000 increase in the program. Even with the heating fuel decrease about 7,000, it was the electric this year that killed us, just like everybody else. We're up $27,000. It's just frustrating. And I follow the legislation right now. They're talking about anything new. There's not one thing on energy for schools, nothing.
Is that in keeping with everybody else? It's 36%. Is that what the going increase is for everyone, pretty much? I didn't realize it had gotten that high.
So Donna, here's the catch to that.
Right, the
It's
percent.
more than that, and then here's the why.
Or if you
Beyond
get
that?
$20,000 bill at work, it's picked up a lot.
We have a multi-year contract. And so what they're basing their number on is they're thinking, okay, we gotta come up with a number that's gonna be reasonable. And is it a 5-year contract or am I making that right? It's a 3-year contract. So they've got a balance. We're gonna pay that rate for 3 years. So if the rate were to go above it, we're still paying the rate that we negotiated. So they're trying to balance that in. So when you see that jump from 8.29 cents, that actually might have been, we might have been lucky for a couple of years because the jump happened and we were still paying the 8 cents. It's still frustrating when it's $27,000 bump though. It's a quarter percent of your budget. And then we still have Siemens contract, the energy savings, the project that was done many moons ago. We're on year 12 of 17.
When is that over? 5 years. 5 years.
I can't wait, Jeff, because it's 40 grand plus that'll come out of the budget and won't go back. We've talked about it, and we actually, the board asked me this year what it would take to pay it off. It's a few $100,000 that's left. This project was done years ago to do like spray foam door seals. They put in some light sensors, monitors so computers were shut down at night, things like that. It still feels like it's just going on forever. And each year this number increases a little bit, so it's not flat. But every year I go back to Don and say, we're just got another year down.
I didn't realize you got all that off. I thought it was just for replacing fluorescent lights.
There was a bunch of things with it.
With fluorescent lights.
Correct. So
Fluorescent for fluorescent.
we used to get the bulbs for free that ended. And now and they went from like 3 lights to 2, right? So there was reduction there.
It was a good, yeah.
The savings is supposed to cover the cost of the what you're paying. I don't know, but LED is off. We're replacing now with LED. We're not even
Well,
using.
yeah, because it was too soon.
Correct. And LEDs at the time were $25 a bulb, and now they're not, so. Program 8, operations and maintenance, there's a couple of our custodial staff are in there, so their increases or their salaries is in that contract. And then you see the increase in Kerma. It looks like it's a big jump in Kerma, but what I'll tell you is that the cyber insurance is part of that number. And last year, we paid 16 months. It was cheaper to do that. And it also put us on track for when we renew things. We didn't, and Don, we had a conversation about this. We paid for 16 months and now we're down to 12. So it's a July 1 rollover, just like everything else. So it matches our fiscal year, but we prepaid it last year. So it wasn't in the budget and now it is.
We still got the facility director in there.
Correct,
What
it is.
happened with that?
So the facilities director is still in the budget, so are the benefits. The board was waiting, we're waiting to see what happens on the selectmen side of things, to see if because they were in discussion to figure out if they were considering to put a facilities person in. CIP has recommended it. That's something that, the board's kind of said.
How did the hiring process go? It was approved last year.
It's been a struggle. So we had a few people come in for interviews. Some were fix-it folks. We had we were moving on an individual and couldn't take the pay cut. This person was making double what we had to offer with when he had his bonuses out. So the board is trying to look at, they didn't increase the salary at this point in time because they're waiting to see how off the selectmen side if they make a move or not. There is conversation. Ashford is interested in sharing. They're just off a year. They were not ready to do that. So I had a conversation with that superintendent to see if it's something that, we get 3 days, they get 2, something like that, or vice versa, depending on projects. And so that's kind of where we're sitting right now. But the board wanted to leave it in until we see what happens.
Pay hourly maintenance people more than that. I know what these jobs pay.
Yeah.
If I do.
I don't know how they hired someone at because we had a couple comps last year. I don't know if the job description didn't match, but the people that we were getting were either really fixed people, and we were actually gonna move on the second person and he took a job the next day. And so it's still posted, but, I bumped it back up.
Either were or they went. So they were either fixed people or brain dead or not?
No, they're either fixed people or they're folks that are making the 150, 160 plus. And Brenda and I were joking one day that weird because we look at postings to compare, and there was somebody on the West Coast that was in the 250 range, which is crazy. It's gotta match what you're trying to do. We're talking about 2 buildings, right? Let's just be honest. And that's why the salary is where it's at. And that's the struggle because it's one of those areas that is kind of considered to be a shortage area. And if you can go and make 150, I would you even consider 80, right? So. We were right about that one. Program 9 is system-wide support. There's a bunch of, we have a lot of purchasers in this. And we have increases this year at magnet school. When you see the increase there, that could be a new student that's going to be going to a magnet school. It's the tuition we're legally required to pay. The teacher retirement valuation, you see a big jump there. That's every other year we have to pay the full valuation. And then the off years, we just pay the 1,300, I believe is the number. And so that valuation is an actuarial valuation that we're required to do. So that's in the budget. And then IT services went up. And this is on both sides, on obviously shared contract with the town and the Board of Ed. And they, again, shortage area, their increase was on their work, not, what am I trying to say? What am I trying to say, Pete? It was labor, thank you. It was on the labor. The labor
It could be
increase.
about labor.
Novus increased on their labor costs. And so we're sticking with the 4 days a week, which is what we have on site now. It's working, and we'll continue to do that. But they bring an army, you know, for what we get from them is worth every penny. So there was an increase there. And then again, this decreased fund for district assessments. We are constantly evaluating with the new reading program that we're implementing. We removed, it came with assessments. So we removed a very expensive reading assessment. And you can see that in iReady on the budget lines. And probably in the future, that whole line for iReady will go away because we'll be using a different assessment for math. We're waiting for it to come out and it aligns with the reading.
I'm sorry, which one was that?
So if you look at the line that says iReady, and there's a cross out next to it because part of what we used to get the cross out part was an additional piece, the tools, and we're not doing that either. And program 10 is probably the best news of the night.
Could I just ask a question?
Oh, yeah,
This is
definitely.
small.
So instead of hiring a service to someone, if someone's gonna be out, they would call service and the service would find a sub. We basically pay someone a stipend and staff reports out to that person. They call our subgroup and then they report it out to our office staff on a daily basis.
Principal or secretary.
Correct. It's outside of their hours. So this person is working at night, there's a window of a couple of hours and there's a window in the morning of a couple of hours. And that's why it's done as a stipend, not as if it were their hourly rate, it would be more than that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just looking at some of the increases here that are
You're at
pretty
9?
large. Yeah, I'm still on 9.
Yep.
So where did you, I guess I could when I have time, I'll just go over it more closely, but did you save big in some area that, other than the fact that, well, maybe I'll just ask open-ended, did you save somewhere to keep it down as low as you did, going from 218 to 225?
Savings in the cybersecurity monitoring.
Oh, that's right.
services,
Correct.
there's a savings in the school assessment.
The school assessment was the biggest one.
I was gonna ask you on that,
That's cybersecurity.
Oh, yeah.
that part of it too.
right, the school assessment, which you said would go away eventually?
That I do believe that will go away. Yep. Just like when and we leave these in there when they go away, if you look at the district-wide academic subscriptions, Newsella and Read Naturally, there's a dash there because those have gone away. We'll leave those in for 3 years to show that line will disappear. I do expect the same thing for iReady. So it said toolbox next to it. And right now, all we're using is iReady Math, and that's 3,000. I expect that's gonna go away as well.
The cybersecurity monitoring, does that have anything to do with Novus's performance?
No, not, what do you mean?
Like,
Does have to do-
are they doing some work that makes us more secure, that
Correct,
Yes.
100%.
you don't need to do as much monitoring?
Absolutely.
Okay,
They've got an entire section in their company that does nothing but that, which allows us to get cyber insurance,
Correct.
which is, by having the cyber insurance, we're reducing our risk if we should get hacked. Health
Yeah.
ransom.
that makes their 11,000 increase not quite so much.
Yeah, because I'm gonna be asking you the same thing next week. Just saying.
No fair piggybacking.
On this one, there's definitely been.
Thanks.
So program 10 is probably like started as the nightmare and ended as the celebration. The first not to exceed number for increase in insurance was 25%. Peter and I both fell off our chairs, I think twice when they told us that. And it actually, we went out to bid and it came back because we have outstanding usage and have both across the town and schools that end up coming back at 5%. And our group that we work with went out again and said, look, can you get it even better than that? And they came back at a 0 as long as we took dental as well. So we are making that move. You see the big change in my dollar amount down there in the health side, because the number of folks that we hired, the folks that left probably were taking insurance, and the folks that we hired are not. And so not only was it a 0, but you can see a big drop there because the folks are not taking insurance. Not as many are taking insurance. So there's $155,000 difference in that, which is huge. If we had a 25% increase, it would have been painful. But I will take $150,000 reduction in days a week. The only on the backside of this, the only other thing we wanted to share with you, before you have any questions for us, just with the changes that are occurring on the federal level, I made sure I shared this with the board. We offset our budget with a lot of federal dollars. If that changes, it could make a huge impact on this budget. When you're talking about $716,000, Title I is federal, REAP is federal, Title IV is federal, excess cost is state but tied to federal. IDA is federal, non-lapsing is just the board's account. Title IV is federal, Title II is federal. You get my point. If there's adjustments to these numbers and you get less, if the board gets less, this is a huge impact. When you're talking about Title I grant, you're talking about a teacher. You're talking about Title IV grants, you're talking about clubs for the middle school. You're talking about IDEA, you're talking about multiple teachers. Preschool is covered by a portion of that, special ed teachers were covered by a portion of that. And I try to reiterate this every year because I think it's really important. If you sit through budget presentations in other towns and other boards of ed and superintendents, this is the page that you often don't see. Because this is where people say they're out. It's their safety net and they don't report it out. We have every single dollar in these grants offsetting the budget to provide programs. I think that's really important for people to understand because we try to be as transparent with funding as we can. And this is an example of that. Even with all the offsets, we're still over $10 million this year. It's a $433,000 increase. It's a 4.43 And that's where the board has ended for the presentation period tonight. Any questions about anything in the main budget document that you have, or in any of the specific programs that I can answer, or Brianna can answer?
You know, the most startling thing is the reduction in the school population again,
Yeah,
which it keeps on going down. Since 2006, I think it's only been 2 years it's actually gone up.
I agree, Bruce. The jump, it kind of, we were in that 400 range for a while, and I feel like we've dipped again. We were kind of hovering around that 400, 430 for several years, and now we're under that and continue to be. And that's why the board is continuing to have the conversation about what do we do about facilities? It's expensive, and I said this at the last board meeting. It is expensive to run 2 buildings and 1 building with 170 kids in it. Finding a way to get to 1 building, there's operational savings in that. There's, if we could run 1 bus route, that might save some money, but not a lot. But it's expensive to run 2 schools. Even if that number were to drop another 50, provide a middle school program, there's not extra things in there. You're providing, you want to run a music program, you need a music person.
Yeah, it's economies of scale. Yeah, you could have 100 more kids and still.
Amen. Correct. Yeah, and literally you could add the whole school of 100 kids and you wouldn't hire an additional teacher. As long as they're equal in the district, I should say that, right? But yes, it's correct. You could add 100 kids and, they'd be distributed across the grades. Your per pupil would drop. Again, here's part of the problem, right? You're not changing your program. You're not really changing how you're spending things. It's just that you have more students, so your per pupil drops.
At what point do you start looking at laying off teachers? Because I mean, we have some classes that have 11, 12 kids in them. You have the 3rd or the 4th grade class this year. You have 2 classes with 20 students each in them. But you have other classes that there's 12 students in them, 10, 11. I mean, if you were to condense some of these classes, you could lay off 6 staff members. I mean, I hate to say that, but in a business sense, it seems to make the most sense.
Are you looking at the middle school side of things, Bruce?
I'm looking at both schools.
Yeah. So I would say the elementary side is to me less apparent in that. Whereas the middle school side is the challenge, and this is what people look at, is that to run a middle school model, just as all middle schools do, you have separate teachers for their content specific, and their endorsements, their teacher certification endorsements are based on that. So you have to have a math endorsement to teach 8th grade math. You have to have an ELA endorsement to teach reading, right? So to do that, you need those numerous people to run a middle school model. Where you find that in the elementary school is their catch-alls, so they can teach all the subject areas. And it's typically a pre-K through 6th or although that has shifted some. And so to do that, you would be changing the entire middle school model across every grade level, and it would impact your offerings. And I don't know how you would change it, because you still need the 3 homerooms. You still need it in the English language arts. You still need the math. You still need the science and social studies. And they're different certifications.
Yeah, but you could look at the way you're rotating your students from class to class.
Right, but I still need the person. Even if the class size went to 1, I still need the math teacher, even if they're not teaching, which is why they've made them small to do that. That makes sense. And it's not the only thing they're doing in their schedule. There's other things they're doing, intervention, things like that. But it is something that we are looking at too, but that breaks the middle school model. I don't know if you want to chime in on that, but I think that's something that is important to the board and the community, is to maintain that model.
They'd be behind the 8 ball thing. as they advance to high school without it. I think.
And not only that, there's the accreditation officials too.
You can't have somebody teaching the content area if they're not certified for it.
Right.
So you have to have a certified person to do it. And I understand your point. This to me is more of a legislative issue, and I struggle with the same thing. I'm a certified teacher, but I can only teach one content area, and I would argue I could go into a lot of different content areas and I can teach. But legally, I can only teach one. There's again, part of the educational system where in legislation, the certification process through the State Department of Education has really funneled particularly the middle school, for small middle schools like we have, it hurts us. If I could have a catch-all 6 through 8 certification, someone who, which let's face it, our staff is bright enough to do this, you know, if Jeff could teach ELA and math, that would change. But right now, I can't do that because it's separate certifications. And people don't have those, typically aren't gonna have the dual certification.
And then even if they do go to get the certification, we would still have to pay for their tuition reimbursement as part of the contract. So you're not really saving much.
Right, and the challenge on the elementary side is 24 is too big for one kindergarten. If we put 24 in, you'd be hiring a para. It's a wash. So that's why it's 2 sections that we're planning on at 12. To me, that number has to cross probably 38 before we consider another section.
Why, is it because of figuring class sizes that you don't include the transfer out students in your totals?
Yeah.
So like we really have 381 or whatever it is.
Correct. It's what are actually in your home classrooms. That's why we show those numbers. Correct.
So last year, as we all know, like first like referendum failed, adding it back. I don't remember what the total was. Say this referendum fails again. Is there anything in here that is that tight?
I will say that I have shared some things with the board that.
I'm not asking you to show us your hand, you know.
No, but I'll say that they are very aware that what's in this budget is needs-based. So anything that I share with the board as far as reductions, I'm always going to try and propose something that's not gonna directly impact kids, right? So if something gets reduced, I'm gonna do everything in my power to suggest something that's not going to be about kids, which is just the same reason last year when they put the $20,000 in their budget for the additional maintenance. Here it is again. And we can show you the bills for it, we can show you the need for it. But I'm going to, if they get hit again, that would be my type of recommendation, because I don't want to do things that are going to impact the student. I don't know if you want to add to that, but.
Any questions?
No, but I will say, that negotiation for the contracts, was a fantastic discussion, and it was very open, and the teachers union was very, I don't want to say necessarily accommodating, but it was very, everybody was basically working to the same end.
They're aware.
Yeah.
They're aware of where it's at
Yeah.
financially. And there's lots and lots and lots of settlements that were significantly higher than what they said about.
Yes,
So,
that was my feeling.
So what, are you getting a specific picture of what's gonna happen on the national level that would directly affect you other than what you?
no, and obviously everyone's got their own feelings about what's gonna happen, and I don't respond to those right now. Until this stuff hits the courts, that's where the decision's made. So, you know, if we've already gotten some dear colleague letters from the state, and there's nothing you can do right now because you're not gonna change anything until you know you legally have to change something, right? There are some things that, and I can't reiterate this enough, this is something that I wish when I went through my superintendent program, they had pushed a little bit more, and that was about the importance of knowing your state legislators and the conversations. If you look at the sheer number this year, Peter and I were just talking about this the other day, the number of educational proposals this year is absolutely insane. There are more unfunded mandates in it. And it's like, if you're gonna talk to Tammy, talk to Jeff, I'm using that as a strategy. I'm giving feedback on things, because there's things that keep coming through, that just don't make sense. They're not well thought out and they hurt small towns. If you know the paid leave act that was just done, they provided more time for people outside of contracts that we negotiated in you know, fair practices. Those things shouldn't happen. And so anywhere you can support special education, that changes the overall budget, right? The percentage we would get for reimbursement for school projects, that changes our budget. Those types of things really make an impact. And the more we can be on the same page and connect with our state reps and the people that have those conversations at the state level, and be all done.
Here's one thing that occurred to me last year, and I don't know if the picture is the same this year. Our ECS money from the state only went up 1% in the budget we're in now. That's right, John? I mean, the
I don't know
I just remember in the breakdown that we did it, you know, like when we describe it to the voters and to the public at the old town hall, that was the number that jumped out at me. ECS went up 1%.
Most
that-
people right
you know
now,
what it's
their
at?
ECS is dropping.
Dropping from that.
Their ECS funds are decreasing, and particularly in the Northeast. I think what's helping us right now is the number of students that we have that are qualifying as living in poverty. Is helping us with our funding. There are some districts that are losing millions over the number of years. This is something that I'll give them credit that, you know, the state has held harmless. If they don't do that and they start dropping, it does hurt us, but we're like 30,000 over a few years, where other places like Colin next door are, some of them are hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. ECS is another formula that's broken. It's another formula that is broken. And my superintendent's group is really trying to advocate to look at the factors of what impacts small towns. Because that's the Northeast. From here to the Rhode Island border, we're small town USA, but we're underrepresented. We really started pushing that. We push forward our own ECS adjustment. Some of the bigger, stronger towns that have lots of money did not like what was put forward.
Question I have in regard to the budget, though, so there's lots of pictures throughout this of children and everything. Do you get permission from
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
We had releases in anybody that can't be in any of our photos or on our TVs or stuff.
Questions? Thanks a lot, guys.
If anybody has questions that, you know, you leave and you're like, oh, shoot me an email, give me a call, glad to answer the questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, present to speak, public participation.
Oh, no, I was just gonna ask for, could you by any chance, pinpoint dates that are particularly good to, meetings that we should watch for background?
We just
I
had.
know on the 11th, you met, I think, but
Are you talking about budget?
I'm
work
talking about
sessions?
the Board of Ed's discussions about budget.
Yeah, we just.
And the vote, maybe the night of the vote.
That was last week. I think it was last week on Tuesday.
Yeah, this last week, because I listened to it I
If you
listened to
want-
it on YouTube.
If you want a new president to speak, I'll give the dates afterwards. If that's okay with you. I can look.
Whereas to speak, public participation is desired and encouraged. Speakers will be limited to time and appropriateness of comments to maintain progress, stay on topic, and maintain the quorum. So we have a wait for president to speak. We do not. So Phil could send those out.
Yep, so the dates were January 15th, January 22, January 29, and February 11th. And the 11th has two meetings. It was a 6 o'clock pre-meeting, and then I don't know that there was much discussion. There was some discussion at the board
Yeah.
email. Yeah. and that was it.
And then we had a regular meeting.
Anybody for good and welfare or any other comments? So have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I gotta.
You won't be here next week.
Then it's an hour back.